All right. Hey everybody, this is This Works Marketing, where we discuss breaking or cutting edge marketing concepts that help you grow your business, build your business today and in the future. My name is Ken Carey. I'm a direct sales expert for the last 30 years, working with big companies and small companies and Fortune 500 brands, generating over $6 billion in sales. And today we're talking about how are you going to start, how do you build your business when retail channels are shrinking? All right, I'm going to say that again. How do you build your business, or how do you grow your business specifically, when retail channels are shrinking? Now, the reality is you have to accept the fact that retail channels are shrinking. As a matter of fact, according to Forbes magazine, in 2017, there were 3,591 retail stores closing. That was just in 2017, so we don't even know what the numbers are going to be for this year. But in 2017, 3,591 retail stores have closed. So when that's happening, you have to start thinking about what are you going to do, especially if you're a product manufacturer or you sell products at retail specifically. What are you going to do? How does that affect your business? You have to start thinking about that, because sometimes I hear people talking about, and especially when meetings that I get into, they talk about, retail channels. It's coming. It's almost around the corner. These things are kind of looking doom and gloom. But you know what the reality is? You have to take a reality check, because it's happening. It's not going to happen. It's not in the future. It is happening right now. So you have to have a strategy. You have to deal with that somehow. So, especially if you're a product manufacturer, what do the stores like? I'm just going to read a couple off a list of the people that retail channels that have been closing in 2017. Channels like Sears, Macy's, Kmart, JCPenney's, and H.H. Gregg. How will those closings affect your bottom line? Like I said, if you're a product manufacturer and you're selling your products at retail, that is going to affect your bottom line. So how do you fight back? What do you do? Well, one thing you can do is to start building a direct-to-consumer relationship. Now, before I get into that, let's think of your alternatives, because there are alternatives. I mean, when these channels start closing in and start closing, as I said, you have to have an option. So one option is Amazon. Amazon is certainly a viable option, except when you think about Amazon and what does that mean to you in your business. So is it a great channel? Absolutely. Should every company have an Amazon strategy? Definitely. Absolutely. But when you have your retail channels starting to close in on you and you start relying more and more on Amazon, what you start doing is you start losing leverage. And as a product manufacturer and a brand, losing leverage is never a good place to be. My father-in-law always told me when I was growing up, the minute you start losing leverage, you start losing, period. So keep the leverage on your side and do whatever you can to be out of that position. So we talked about Amazon. Amazon is definitely an option. So is Walmart. And with their acquisition of Jet.com, of course, they're viable as well. But when you start dealing with those giants, those online giants, which are battling it out, I mean, they are in they're in a bloodfest right now about who's going to win that online retail channel. And Walmart is being, pretty a formidable opponent. So what happens there? So first of all, the problem you have is you are on a shelf with literally millions of different products. And specifically, if you are a housewares product, you're probably not the only housewares product in that category. So when you are on an online shelf, you're battling it out with everybody else. So what you have is you don't have the ability to differentiate yourself really a lot, because it really comes down to price. It's a pricing war at that point. And then And then also there are strategies to get you up higher in the search in Amazon. So, that costs you time, and that costs you money, and that costs you opportunity cost, and that costs you people to do that. You have to have full-time people just to handle your Amazon business. And like I said, it's important, but the further invested you're getting in that, and the less invested you get in retail, which is no fault of yourself, those channels are they're starting to, the squeeze is starting to happen on them, and you're going to be the one who's going to pay the price. So you go to Amazon, and eventually what happens is not only are you in a sea of competition and a sea of competitive pricing, you now are trying to differentiate yourself from everybody else. So that's another challenge. So now you are losing leverage because you're working on their margins, you're playing by their rules, and you're trying to differentiate yourself from everybody else. Well, that becomes a pretty tall order. That's a pretty tall task to deal with. And Walmart and Jet.com is the same situation. So, is it an option? Absolutely, it's an option. All right, so the other option is you could go to eBay. eBay's an option, right? Another online retailer, if you will. eBay's an option, but again, you're out there with a lot of other products, and you're fighting it out for the same place, and you're fighting price, and there could be all kinds of gray market products fighting against you. So eBay, Amazon, Walmart, those are options, but again, you start losing leverage, and you start playing by their rules. So my suggestion is, the sooner you start making a commitment to a direct-to-consumer model, the better off you're going to be today, tomorrow, and way into the future. So as you start thinking about a direct-to-consumer business, and I'm going to talk to you about the things that you need to do and the advantages of a direct-to-consumer business, you have to kind of take a step back and think about and ask yourself as a company, why haven't I done this before? And the reason I say and I suggest that you ask your company, yourself as a company, why haven't you done this before, is because you don't want to make that same mistake again. In this retail environment, in this environment of where we are selling products to consumers, you get a second chance. If the online retailers weren't here and brick and mortar were failing, you probably wouldn't have a second chance. But now you do have a second chance to start making decisions in the future that you didn't make today. So that second chance is a direct-to-consumer business model. Now, let's talk about the benefits of a direct-to-consumer business model compared to what you're doing what you're doing indirectly. So, with a direct-to-consumer business model, you get to control your message 100%. You can put together the perfect selling message to talk about the features and benefits that differentiate you from your competitors, and you can control that message. When you were on Amazon, when you were on an online retailer, when you were at a retail store, you cannot control your message. You cannot control who's next to you on the shelf. You cannot control who is fighting for the same attention span for you on an online retailer like Amazon or Walmart. You're playing defense and you're not playing offense. And you can't play defense, a football analogy, you can't play on your heels all the time. Once you start playing on your heels, you start playing defense all the time, you're so exhausted that eventually the offense takes over. And that offense are these big online retailers. So with a direct-to-consumer model or a direct-to-consumer business, you're going to control your message. So think about it. If you had the opportunity to create the absolute perfect selling message to convince consumers about your product, what makes your product better, what makes you different, your value proposition, everything that you need to do to convince a consumer to try your product, wouldn't you do that? Doesn't that make a lot of sense? Of course it does. It makes a ton of sense. So when we were talking about online retailers and we're talking about brick and mortar, here's one of the challenges you have. is when your business model is built that way, your customer has to come to you, right? So let's take for example, you're looking for a blender. I'm a housewares company, or I'm a customer, and I'm looking for a blender of a housewares company. So I go to Amazon and I look, best blender. First of all, the fact that I put up the best blender, that's a marketing challenge in itself, because if you're a blender company, you have to start differentiating yourself from everybody else, and you're fighting them off, and that's costing you time, that's costing you money, that's costing you margins. That's just the tip of the iceberg. But the point I'm really trying to make here is that your customer has to come to you. So that's a very difficult thing. So when you're building a direct relationship with your customer, you are attracting that customer to you. It's a much different business model versus coming to them, hoping you get their attention, versus getting their attention and bringing them to you. And that's the beauty of a direct-to-consumer model, or creating a direct relationship with your customer. So now you can put your message together, get it specifically to where your customer's attention is. Sometimes it's on television, sometimes it's in social media, sometimes it's on radio, sometimes it's in short-form commercials, long-form commercials. There's all kinds of ways and different times of the day where your customer's attention is. And not only is it on different platforms, it's in different little snackable pieces. When you're on Facebook, that attention span, or the way to grab that customer is in seconds. You're getting somebody through their feed, and you have to grab their attention as they get through their feed. Well, that in itself is challenging, okay? But you have that opportunity on a social media site like Facebook or Instagram or something like that. But you can control that message that's going to get that person's attention really quickly. Same with television. You can put together television commercials, both in short form and long form and mid form. Market directly to where your consumer is in your based on what your product research and what your market research is saying, just like targeting on social media, and you can make a very compelling message. Now, how do you make a compelling message? There's a logical way about going about doing that. So first of all, you have to think about, again, you're grabbing that customer's attention when they're maybe not even thinking about it, and you have to do that. Okay, so when you do that, one of the things you're going to want to do is you're going to want to give some information, some valuable information about your product or service. You're going to want to demonstrate what that product or service does. You need to do it in an entertaining way. You need to make your offer exclusive to what you're doing and to where you are in your platform. And like I said before, you have to demonstrate it. And demonstration is really, really critical, because now you don't just have the opportunity to talk about how great your product is. You can prove it. You can demonstrate it right then and there with the time allotment that you have. In social media, you can do a demonstration that grabs someone's attention real quickly and gets them to go to a microsite to get more information. In television, you can make that demonstration go even longer and get them to either make a call or go to the website and get more information. But I was able to tell my whole story, right? Again, going back to the retailer and going back to the online retailer, you do not have that opportunity to tell your whole story. And that's a challenge. And like I said, with all the other things that are working against you, you lose leverage. With building a direct relationship with your customer, you're getting that leverage back, because you're getting to do everything you want to do, that perfect sales message, that perfect information message, everything that you can do to get somebody's attention and get somebody who's just thinking about something to actually considering it and buying it is now in your control. So when you start doing that, when you start doing that, you start getting customers who want to do business with you. They buy your product, okay? Let's talk about that. They're buying your product, and they really like your product. The fact that somebody has purchased their product directly from you has several benefits. One, you can control your margins a lot better when you are controlling the conversation and you're going direct to your customer. There's no more middleman. So your customer saves money and you pass that value on to them. Secondly, you now have that opportunity to offer that customer things they may not be thinking about. Special offers, different kinds of incentives, coupons, discounts, all those types of things that when you do that and you fulfill those obligations or you fulfill those promises, now you create this trust going back and forth between you and your customer. When you create trust, now that person wants to do business with you more frequently. That is beautiful, because what an online retailer does and what a retailer does is sell a product. And they're going to sell a product through, and they're going to sell another one and sell another one and sell another one. Their business model is not made to create a direct-to-consumer relationship. Their business model is made to get products in and get them out as fast as they can. Well, what's the problem with that? You no longer have that relationship with that customer. So the product goes and you sell your product, which is great, but what if you want to come up with another product that is similar to the category that you've been very successful with? Well, when you go to an online retailer or a brick and mortar retailer, that customer is gone. You really don't have any idea what they liked, what they didn't like, what they would want in the future. That product has been sold. That customer's on their way. Now, so let's say you want to add another product to your category. You want to add, not to your category, but to your portfolio of products. So one option is to do a lot of research with research firms like McKinsey and Boston Consulting and things and companies like that cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. That you think that your customer wants another product. You think that's what they would buy, but you don't really know, but you spend a lot of money to try to find that out. Not saying they're terrible, I'm just saying they're not as efficient as having the ability to be able to talk to the customer that's purchased your product already, ask them, what do they like about your product? What do they dislike about your product? If I were able to make a product that you would like based on my brand, what would you like? That's a perfect scenario. Now you can make products that your customer already knows. You already know your customer wants to buy that product because you asked them directly. Think about how that changes your business. Think about how that allows you to allocate dollars to actually creating products that you know customers are going to buy versus investing dollars into products you don't know they're going to buy. You hope they're going to buy. Wouldn't you rather be in a position of I know they're going to buy versus I hope they're going to buy? Well, that's what creating a direct-to-consumer relationship allows you to do. It allows you to talk to that customer and make products and services you know they're going to buy. Let me give you an example of that. So several years ago, Porsche decided they wanted to build a sedan. We're going to call that sedan the Panamera. Well, they didn't really know if their customer, the Porsche enthusiast, wanted a four-door sedan. They thought it would be a good idea, but they didn't really know. So they had one of two options. One would be to invest tens of millions of dollars to build a car that they hope their consumers would like, and then build inventory and then try to sell it. Or, and what I call, try to force that product down the consumer's throat, which is a very expensive thing to do. But what Porsche did was something different. They went to their core group of Porsche enthusiasts and said, if we were going to build a sedan, a Porsche sedan, what would you like in that car? And if you give us a list of the things that you'd like, would that be a car that you'd be interested in purchasing? So what they found out was fascinating. They found out a couple of things. One is it had to be very stylish. Usually a four-door sedan is not very stylish, and Porsche was going to make a four-door sedan that was stylish, and their customers already said they wanted that. Secondly, it had to have power. It had to have get up and go. It's a Porsche. It had to have that. The third point is it had to have that Porsche sound. It had to have that rumble, that gut, that sound of a Porsche. And fourth is that it had to be sleek, and it had to just feel Porsche. It had to have that back end of a Porsche that any Porsche enthusiast would know. So it had to have the visual appeal, the sleek appeal, the sound, the guts, the energy, the power. And if it had those, they said their customers said they would buy it. So what Porsche did was they did this information going direct to their customer, finding out what they wanted, and then built a car called the Panamera. And they built a car that their customer already told them they would buy. And it became one of the most successful new Porsche brands that they ever launched as a company, saving literally tens of millions of dollars by having a direct relationship with their customer. So think about how that can help you in your business. Having a direct relationship with your customer by selling direct to them, asking what they want, not only saves you money and gives you better margins, it gives you long-term profit opportunities. Another example that we were involved in specifically was for the Oreck vacuum company. Now, Oreck was known and still is known for a very famous 8-pound Oreck upright. And it's a fantastic vacuum. And they had a direct-to-consumer model. When they came to us, we created commercials that demonstrated that product, showed everything that was wonderful about that product, and how it could help the person at home who's going to use that vacuum make their life easier. People bought that product, and they bought a lot of them. So, great story, and something we were very proud of. But what that allowed Oreck to do was to say, we want to expand our business into other household products. And they asked their customers who bought vacuums and were very happy with the brand, said, what would be the next logical product that Oreck would come out with, being a clean home and a company that makes quality products? And what they found was that their customers would be very interested in an air purifier. Makes sense. It's another household product, keeps your house clean, keeps you healthy. It really fit well within the brand, and their customers said, we'd really like that. So what did Oreck do? They went directly to their engineers and made an air purifier, not just an air purifier, a fantastic air purifier. But what they did was they didn't need to spend tens of millions of dollars trying to figure out what their customer wanted and build something and hope somebody wanted it. They talked to their customers. Their customers told them they wanted that. They built an amazing air purifier. We did a commercial that demonstrated it and showed how it was different and better than the competition. And within a year and a half, that air purifier became the #1 selling air purifier on television. Because A, the margins were there because we went direct to their customer in a direct-to-consumer model, but also we built a relationship with that customer and they told us what we wanted. So the bottom line here is retail channels are squeezing and they're shrinking. The online channels are growing, and that puts you in an awkward position. You either have to pay to play to be with the retailers, and that world is shrinking, or you need to pay to play to be with the online retailers, and that world is growing, which is eventually going to cost you more money in margins and in advertising costs that aren't necessarily working to your benefit, because you're fighting it out with every other product manufacturer on those platforms. So building a direct-to-consumer business is not only smart, it's a necessity to survive. It is happening. These things are happening. Google, Amazon, and those companies aren't messing around. Thousands of retailers are closing every year, and that trend is just continuing to grow and grow and grow. So you need to take action, and need to take action now. Especially if you are a housewares company that is a big part of your business. It depends on your shelf space at the brick and mortar store that is shrinking. You have to be in a position where you need to get the leverage back and start building your business. So, I know I just talked about a lot of things, but I've been in a lot of conference rooms and I've been in a lot of boardrooms talking to a lot of big companies, and this conversation happens a lot about what are we going to do to start looking at how we're going to grow our business when retail channels are closing and online retailers are building. How are we going to get the leverage back? And building a direct-to-consumer business is the way to do it, and you need to be doing it now. So I hope this was helpful. And if you have any questions, you have any thoughts or anything specifically how a direct-to-consumer model can help you in your business, you can contact script2screen.com, and we'd be glad to help you. And again, I hope this is helpful. And if you know somebody that this information would be valuable for, I would really appreciate it if you share it with them, because you might be helping them out with their business challenges. And I wanted to talk about one thing in particular today. With This Works Marketing, and as a communication aspect and at the media aspect of our core business, Script to Screen, in the last few weeks, we lost somebody who was extremely close to me and close to our business. Was my father-in-law, who was a true business icon and a mentor to me and to my wife and to our business. Always had great business advice for our business, and just was that pillar of knowledge whenever we had thoughts and questions about business and where to take things, and we've been very blessed to have such a mentor with us, and we've been very blessed to have a thriving business. But we lost him in the last few weeks, and I just wanted to tell everybody that and just share the fact that when you're around people that you grow from, that are mentors, that are confidants, that are really special people in your lives, hold them closely. And I just ask that you make that phone call, you text that friend, you write that letter, you email that person that you've been maybe hesitant to do before, because you never know when things, life happens and things happen quickly. But I wanted to just say thank you to what my father-in-law has meant to myself and my wife and our business, and to express to everybody that when you have that type of person in your life, hold them close and cherish that relationship. So I hope this episode of This Works Marketing was beneficial, and we'll be back with you next week on another topic that will help you consider cutting-edge marketing concepts that will help you grow your business today and in the future. Until next time, thanks again. Appreciate it.